Good evening and welcome to the VI Voices. I'm your host, Natalie Nelson, Tang. And of course, this evening joining me are my co-hosts, Boyd McFarlane and Clint Ferris.
Good evening, Nat.
Welcome. Another evening in paradise. And of course, we're going to start off as usual with our hot topics. And first up, the plane wreck. As you all know by now, the fuselage and the remains of the plane that crashed not this past Saturday, but Saturday before, October 13, was found. And sadly, 2 of the passengers were found inside of the plane as well. And as we saw in the Daily News report, as well as the St. Croix Avis, it is attorney Darwin Carr and the other passenger, Miss Hamilton, Rachel Hamilton. So our condolences go out to those families and keep them in prayer, and hope that they will be able to stay strong during this trying time. And of course to the family of the pilot as well, Kirby Hodge, who we understood is still missing. And last but not least, the only survivor was Valerie Jackson Thompson, who we understand is still recovering in St. Thomas Hospital as we speak.
And I'm going to say now, to God be the glory, because Rachel is found. Mr. Carr has been found, and that's so essential, because when someone is lost, no matter, you want them to be found, you want them to be brought home, and you want to bring some closure. And to the family, again, my condolences, and I can't say how much I'm so happy that she's found, that she's not lost and wandering.
Lost at sea and wondering.
And I'm glad that she's found.
Exactly. So again, our prayers goes out to all of the families of those lives that were lost, as well as the survivor. Nonetheless, other matters, pressing matters, we do have our 5th Constitutional Convention. They look like they're back on the radar, as we understand the chairman, Gerard Los James II, indicating that while he was out of the territory, he is back, and he has been meeting and caucusing with the other members, and I believe at least half are on board to reconvene on or before October 31st, which I believe is a deadline that was given based on the revisions committees butting into the picture. So it looks like they want to reconvene, and they may have a majority agreement shortly, if not already, on a date certain in which to reconvene. What do you think, guys?
I think, one, I applaud the members of the delegates to the Constitution. Why? Because they kept volleying the argument stating that they need money. No. If you have passion for a cause and you need to get this done, get it done.
Right.
And you can ask other agencies to utilize their facilities, to bring everybody. Exactly. And it's not just about flying people up. You can video conference, you can fax, you can email, you can use your smartphone and get this done. My biggest concern is this. And I'm concerned that they're going to come, just address certain things. The 9 issues that stop, instead of saying, wait a minute, there's certain things that we need to, that you keep saying, it can be amended
at a later date.
At a later date. No. Amend them now.
Right.
And listen to some of the public.
And that might be a more comprehensive way to proceed. However, time is of the essence. Today is October 22nd, so there's not, a lot of time.
I personally don't see them making a deadline. I don't think that. I think it's a good, move, a good sentiment on behalf of the president and the delegates, but I don't see them reconvening.
Well, I think strategically they want to avoid the revisions committee stepping in,
right?
Because if you recall, they were given 30 days in which to act. And failing that, the revisions committee steps in. So they do have a time, pressure that they're working on.
But you know what's ironic? Someone asked me earlier about the discussion, and I told them, one of the worst things to man is free will. That you have to really, you can't give men so many options unless you don't really put them in a box and force them. They don't act. Why took this law to be passed? For the urgency, for them to identify an urgent need and address this. And I think this should have been done way before. When the year opened up, regardless of money, the Constitution is important. It's an operational document that makes us move to another level, and then we can start to really discuss all of those other salient issues that really matter to the Virgin Islands.
And that's so important because we don't want to politicize it, to get it caught up again. It's running into
another election cycle.
It's already been politicized from the time they offered the position to write a constitution. I mean, in defense of the delegates, I mean, they were asking for money and they were trying to get things moved ahead. In comparison to the fourth attempt of doing it, watch how much problems this one had from the genesis of the issue.
Correct.
You had the Senate President, who was at the time, I think it was Hill, and he was against it from then. And then you had the governor in his position, and then you had the whole legislature refusing to give the money that the Congress offered them. So I mean, I think they only acting now because of that, because of
the timelines, but also the legislature is cooperating, which I think they didn't have that in the past, according to the chairman, Los James. I'm understanding that the legislature is allowing use of their facilities, including their teleconferencing.
Which should have been done from the very beginning.
I agree. They're allowing use of the reporters to, document their proceedings. And now they're making it a little bit more accessible than before. I understood. Even when we had Los James II on, he indicated the lack of funding. I mean, anything, you can't operate. But then now they're finding the wherewithal to get it done.
And then the attempt to educate the public. I don't think a good job was done with education as far as the Constitution.
And
because if you speak to mass of the people, they still don't even grasp the concept of a Constitution.
There was more than $250,000, I think that was.
$500,000.
$500,000. That's no easy pennies to educating and enlightening the public. Whatever happened to all of that money? I think it went through UVI.
Talk to Trugenza Roach. He's voting in the election. So maybe the students, when they do have their forums at UVI, should ask Trugenza Roach
what happened.
What happened, and if he's gonna, if the Constitution is, if the miseducation of the Virgin Islands is a part of his legacy, should we then consider voting for him as senator? I think that should be a question that they phrased towards Mr. Roach, Attorney Roach.
Yeah, if we had him on the show, he surely would have asked him that question.
Definitely.
Right? But I think educating the masses is key, because people have to understand the role of the Constitutional Convention, the delegates, and the document that they're trying to put forth for the people. And it's important not just for us sitting here at the table, but our children and our children's children.
It's more essential to them. It has nothing to do with us.
But you see, the delegates that I'm talking about, they're representing the people's view. But I think that's another issue right there. I think a lot of them are allowing their own personal views, and then I'm not listening to the people, because you need to listen to what the people are saying.
They ran and they had the platform, and people voted. I voted based on the platform and the aspirants. So.
Well, we will stay tuned and see what's going on with that. But joining us this evening, we have the acting chairman of the PSC, Public Service Commission. It's Mr. Thomas Jackson, and he is joining us this evening. So we're going to take one quick break, and we'll be right back.
Amen.
Hello there, and we're right back again with VI Voices, and joining us we have M. Thomas Jackson. He is the acting chair of the board for the PSC, Public Service Commission. Welcome this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Jackson, welcome. Now,
he is just ready to roll. We had discussed in the past, Mr. Jackson, that we wanted to invite the PSC to be here on VI Voices, because there were so many issues and different items of concern that was coming up.
Even aspersions being flung all about.
And we decided we want to hear it straight from the horse's mouth. So in all fairness to you, we asked you, we're glad that you took up our offer to be here. So Clint?
Mr. Jackson, first off, just put it out for the viewing audience. What is the role of the PSC?
That's an excellent question. The role of the Public Service Commission is that of a quasi-judicial. We're the same as a judge. We do not take sides. We have the responsibility of creating a balance between the utility and the consumer. The utility, on one hand, has to be able to sustain itself, and the consumer has to be able to afford the services that the utility is providing. I know that sounds like
Yeah, that's can you use sort of you use that what is a 7-letter word? Balance.
Balance, yes.
Balance.
Try
balance.
to create a balance.
So you're talking about balancing, like just like how you balance that pen.
That's
so there's
correct.
equity on both sides.
Supposed to
But
be
then-
equity.
But then,
The people within the Virgin Islands,
Yes.
ratepayers, the small business, the big business, the little man like
Individuals.
myself, saying that there's an imbalance.
Okay.
That PSC seems to have been co-opted by WAPA. That the only thing they do is to raise the LEAC, raise the LEAC
at a
even more.
whim, at a whim, every time that WAPA makes the request, almost without any research or actual background or
So
information to
where's the
verify.
balance there?
That is the misnomer that some politicians and talk show pundits
But we-
try to
that's why we have you here.
perpetuate.
Correct.
There are many times when we have decreased the LEAC. Of course, nobody writes about it or talks about it because it's a reduction in your bill. For the past 3 months before this 25% proposal, the LEAC was steadily going down. Now, we have no control over the stores increasing the price of food or items or shipping or anything like that. But I just put plainly, whenever there is an increase in the cost of fossil fuel, the LEAC will go up. Notwithstanding the fact that some people claim that they can eliminate the LEAC or it's illegal, as long as you're paying for any type of fuel that you have to buy, the cost and the LEAC will continue to rise. If it drops, it will drop. Now, 90% of the times we get WAPA who request an increase. Let's throw out a figure. Let's say they wanted a 10% increase. We have our consultants from Georgetown Consulting Group who will come up with figures and examine the figures that the Water and Power Authority has produced, and they will tell us, okay, they can live with 7% increase and do well, or work with 7% increase. When we try to weigh the balance between it, we realize that, okay, if we give them a 7% increase, they may have what's called an under recovery, so the following month they may not be able to pay for fuel, which ultimately will result in a blackout. We may give them an 8% increase. This is how we try to create a balance.
But can I ask a question? Can you tell me, in dollar amount, give me an aggregate sum, what does WAPA collect in LEAC alone in a given annum?
I cannot give you a dollar account on that. I'm really, apologize for that. If I had someone here that I could call and get the information, I would do it because that is what we do. I'm like Henry Ford. I don't have an answer for every question, but if you give me enough time, I can find an answer.
but Mr. Jackson, I'm concerned, you know why? Because I see something like that it's information that should be readily available to the public.
It is available to the public. You just have to ask maybe somebody in the Public Service Commission's office. I just don't have that information in my
So
head.
is it possible that
Yes.
we can get that aggregate figure sum
Yes, it's possible.
of how much WAPA collects each year in LEAC? Just LEAC. We're not talking about consumption
Yes,
because we are
we
still
can
somewhat
talk about
confused about consumption because we truly want to know what is consumption. We thought that's LEAC.
but
LEAC is an acronym for Levelized Energy Adjustment Clause.
Yes.
Okay? The adjustment goes, again, like I said, with the rise and fall of the cost of fossil fuel. If we didn't have to depend on fossil fuel, they may not be a LEAC, they might be something else. So they won't be a LEAC.
So you're telling me the consumption, within the consumption equation,
Right.
the paradigm that to calculate consumption, what is being charged during consumption?
Let me see if I can answer it this way. If we have 100,000 people in the Virgin Islands that are consumers with WAPA, when it's calculated, that LEAC is spread out equally among the 100,000 people. Because you burn 500 kilowatts, you will pay a certain percentage based on 100,000. If you burn 1,000 kilowatts, you will be charged based on that per 100,000 persons. That is how it's spread out. The LEAC does not really affect an individual per se. It's spread out over a bunch.
But
If we
the
had a million
increase-
people, we would be paying a lot less.
but the
What about
increase in the bills is going to vary because I think the individual customers pay like a 19% increase and the businesses will be at about a 23% increase, regardless of the size of the business.
That's correct.
But that's pretty much how it's spread out. So it's not quite even.
Well, it's not even because our legislators made it that way. We have to work within, just like you, attorney, have to work within the parameters of the law. We have certain laws that we have because we request the judicial to work between it. We cannot arbitrarily and capriciously come up with any figures.
Sure. And then if we look at the report, the October LEAC report, what's the company that you guys consult? Georgetown.
Okay.
We are of the opinion, I'm reading it from your PSC website, we are of the opinion that WAPA finds itself in a position of a severe cash crisis due in a significant part from its past forecasting practices, leading to an under-recovery of fuel expense, coupled with the slow payment practices of certain governmental customers.
Yes.
So that has been known, it's been a practice according to this, but nothing has changed. So why do us, the customers and the small businesses like myself and individuals, have to bear the brunt of this? Because even though they're reporting that it's looking at the request would result in a $38.35 per month increase for a typical residential customer, I don't think that's quite right either. I think this customers are going to see a significantly larger amount on their individual bills.
Okay, it may seem that way, but I want to say, and I can say it the best way I can. If the government does not pay its bills and WAPA runs into a shortfall, they have one or two choices. If they cannot pay for fuel, and Hovensa is not playing around with them anymore, if they can't pay for the fuel, we're going to have blackouts. That's the bottom line.
So why have we not had a blackout and see what happens if it gets to that point? I mean, we're being penalized anyway, so how much worse can it get?
That is a call for WAPA. I can't make that kind of decision. And I'll go this far to say that the hospitals are one of the biggest culprits for not paying their bills.
Both St. Thomas and
Both St. Thomas and St. Croix. Now, if WAPA were supposed to cut the power from the hospital as they would with your house, my house, everybody else's house, and patients start to die, who's liable?
All right.
You see, because it's a government entity, everybody has the attitude, I don't have to pay because you can't cut me.
It's supposedly semi-autonomous, isn't it?
That's correct.
Isn't it?
Yes.
So then why can't they have a separate funding source instead of out of the general fund to pay stuff like their WAPA bills, et cetera, et cetera? Why it have to all be lumped in and then in a case like this, piggyback, we're a government agency?
But why can't somebody start to go to jail? Because there's a legal document called the budget. B-U-D-G-E-T. Budget. Legal.
There's no definition in their vocabulary for that.
It was passed by the legislature as a legal document. There's X amount of dollars in the Wang F. Louis budget to pay WAPA.
Hey, Mr. Jackson, I have one question.
Oh, my apologies.
At any point, can the PSC refuse to give WAPA its demands or what it's asking for the raise, as far as raising any percentage for the year? At any point?
No, because then we'll be acting arbitrarily and capriciously.
You could explain that, please, to me?
Yes. Whenever we have a request for an increase or a decrease, whichever it comes, we have to weigh the balance. It's just like a judge telling you in court. We have the same responsibilities as any of the Superior Court judges or District Court judges. You can't just go around making up sentences or decisions based on how you feel.
Right.
It has to be based on law and on facts.
But what about based on how the people feel? And when I say the people, I'm talking about the same people, Natalie was talking about the small businesses and the consumers.
Well, I'm going to answer the question back to you based on my responsibility, Mr. McFarland.
Yes, sir.
If there was a murder case and everybody believed that the murderer who was convicted should not go to jail because he's a popular guy and everybody likes him, do you think the judge will pay attention to that fact, or should he go by...
No, the judge will interpret the law.
Well, that's the same thing we have to do, interpret the law. But notwithstanding the fact that we do not get paid, we didn't come up with that because it's all volunteer. We're the only commission under the U.S. flag that does not receive a paycheck.
So the only purpose as the PFC is to do that, to act as a judge in the manner. That's the only purpose.
That's the only purpose.
Okay. They don't work on behalf of anyone. They don't work on behalf of the people.
Not on behalf of WAPA, or any utility, and not on the behalf of the public.
Attorney, let me jump in right there.
But let me just clarify though.
Okay.
The board is volunteer, but regardless of whether they were volunteer or they were paid, they still obligated to perform the very same functions and duties.
And we do.
The Virgin Islands.
And we do.
Okay.
Natalie, Attorney Nelson Tang, whether a portion of your website, and he said, we are in the opinion of that WAPA, and he said that we are in the opinion of, and he said it will be detrimental to WAPA. That's what he said. That's what I think what she paraphrased saying. Then he used the word arbitrary and capricious. That means you can hold sides and you can act on a whim. Right. Am I correct?
That's correct.
But with also the opinion that if you pass such a thing, it's going to also be detrimental to the people because they're working and reduced income, and inflation is out of the room, is out in the stratosphere, and prices are gone up all over. So where's that opinion to say you're being fair and balanced, and you're not doing any of those things, of being arbitrary or capricious? Because I'm feeling.
I think
I'm going to answer the question.
And let me, if I'm understanding this, is it like they're weighing more on the side of
WAPA
saying they're severely cash crunch, and where's the voice of the people who are hurting and can hardly? There's some people living without lights, Mr. Jackson.
I understand that.
They can't pay that bill.
I am well aware.
And there's some businesses that are closed
quite
because they
aware
can't pay the
of that.
WAPA bill.
My child business was closed as a result of the WAPA, so I know
So who feels it knows it, right?
Exactly. What I was about to say, Mr. Ferris, is this, right? If we decide to let WAPA bleed out, if I can use those words, the ultimate result is that they cannot pay for fuel, and if they cannot fuel their engines, they will stop running. When they stop running, the entire community, except those that have self-sustaining generators and solar panels and wind generators, they will be the only ones that can afford, that will have power. How is that fair to the majority on the whole?
But can I ask this question? As we go forward,
Yes.
and you're trying to be fair and balanced to both WAPA and the community.
And remember, I pay a light bill too.
Correct, you pay a light bill. But where is there an urgency on the part of the PSC to demand, as we go forward, that WAPA puts forth a sound strategic plan? Something that's sound, and something that we can say that within 5 to 10 years, this is where we're going to be. And we start to move away from this old dilapidated plant to a new modern plant and contribute.
I am so glad I came here because
Virgin
you're
Islands.
asking the kind of questions I like to answer. First of all, the commissioners are handcuffed based on legislation that we can only set rates for WAPA. We can't set benchmarks. We can't tell WAPA what to do. For example, if WAPA came to us and asked for $50 million because they needed to repair a waste heat boiler, okay? And we check with our consultants. The consultant says based on the market, $50 million will repair this waste heat boiler, which in turn will reduce the cost of energy. Let me finish.
Okay, and then I'll ask the question.
We give them the $50,000 and they decide to, I'm not saying they do this, but they decide to say, you know what, to heck with you guys.
So there's no
We need
oversight.
some new trucks, okay? We need some new furniture inside of the building, and they decide to take $40 million and work on the waste heat boiler, patch it up whichever way they can, and use the other $10 million to buy the trucks and buy the other things that we did not benchmark for. When they come back to us and we ask the question, well, we gave you $50 million because $50 million is what you said it would cost to fix the waste heat boiler. What did you do with it? Mr. Hodge can tell us, you guys can go to hell, I don't have to answer you, because the legislature has made it so. We have asked on more than one occasion, I don't want to call the senator's name because it is a political time and I don't want people to think I'm trying to...
Call the senator name.
No, I'm not going to do that.
Was it asked under this current
It was asked under this 29th legislature. And as a matter of fact, in the very last meeting that we had, it was asked. And the senator said, I don't see us giving you that power.
So it's an
You want to be
someplace.
Sherlock Holmes and the duck, who do you think that is? Go
Well,
right
what
ahead.
will be the justification of giving you that power? What about
Because we
that
can
power?
set benchmarks and demand that you do what you say
I
you
know,
will
but if
do.
you're given the money, then what is so wrong about asking for accountability for the money that was given? What's
The
so,
legislature said we can't do it. We
I
can
know, but
only
the
set
basis, the
rates.
reasoning, why? What's the
They never gave that. You remember?
No
You
justification?
remember we were just taking the court recently, and by WAPA, and we asked the case, and they said that the only thing that the Public Services Commission can do is set rates. one senator, and I'll call her name, Senator Nellie O'Reilly, tried to get legislation so we could go back to being an arbiter when there's dispute between bills, because we did that in the past. And the governor vetoed it, and then I think it came back down, and she was fighting for an override, and she didn't get it, and I think it came back up again. I don't keep in touch with the senators and their...
So basically, we're going to have to look for that record, because again, we need to tell the people, we need to find who those senators are that didn't afford Senator Nellie override. Right. So, because again, they're then digging in our pockets. So we need to, so my thing to you is this. You would like to see legislation come about to give you some more power.
I'd like to see legislation that we can regulate Water and Power Authority the same as we regulate the other 5 utilities that we regulate.
So there's a disparity to how you regulate Innovative and how you innovate WAPA.
Innovative,
and the ferries,
telephone company, cable and wireless.
Tell us some of the glaring disparities between how you regulate.
That is the only glaring disparity, that we cannot regulate them other than to set rates.
So you can hold the other entities that you regulate accountable for monies used and how they use it, but you can't do that for WAPA.
No.
So so like for instance, you can hold them. If they say they're going to want a rate increase to deal with infrastructure development in terms of Innovative, and they don't use it, then there can be punitive actions taken.
You're talking about the other utilities?
Yes. About the other utilities.
Yeah, of course, yes.
But you cannot do that against WAPA.
No,
and you'd like to see something like that come forward.
I would like to see equity, and it's going to only happen when WAPA becomes a private company.
But isn't there...
Why you think that is?
Why that you bring that up? But
why I think that is because a government-owned agency, they're not supposed to make a profit. They're not a for-profit agency. Right. A lot of people think that WAPA makes a profit. I made that mistake when I first got on the PSC 6 years ago, and Senator Hill kind of straightened me out and let me know that WAPA is not for profit. So I understand that, but they have to be able to sustain themselves, and when you see them getting these increases, they are only getting it to barely sustain themselves. If you ever take a tour of the WAPA plant, it's in deplorable condition. I mean, I see people beating up on Mr. Hodge. I'm going to tell you with all due respect, Mr. Hodge is doing the best he can with what he has. You hear all these talk show pundits and all the experts in the community that says the man should be fired and he should be this. I am not advocating for him. He can speak for himself. But I used to work in WAPA in 1968, and I went and did a tour and stood in front of one of the panels, and I had deja vu, because it was the same panel that I worked with Mr. Nico and those guys back in 1968.
But you think based on this opinion, based on this information, do you think at some point that we should privatize WAPA? In your opinion?
Yes, I think so.
Shouldn't we have done that already, though?
That should have been done a long time ago.
For crisis?
But see, that's where
crisis?
You know how there's a lot of things I like to get into. I don't want to stay with the LIAC alone, but it should have been done a long time ago. There are those that think it's ours, we should hold on to it the same way as we should have held on to Vitalco. But there comes a time when you have to realize that it's not working.
You can hold on to a sinking ship and sink with a ship? That'll make no kind of sense. This ship is sinking and sinking fast. Things that don't seem to be getting better.
And that's it. And that's where, again, I'm somewhat perplexed with Senator Hill's statement. Yes, WAPA is not a for-profit business.
It's a semi-autonomous agency.
But WAPA should be generating a profit so you can reinvest in the infrastructure and power plant of the utility.
If WAPA was making a profit, we'd be crying even worse than we are, because 70% of what WAPA takes in goes back out to pay for fuel. 70%. 7 cents out of every dime goes to fuel.
So why do we pay so much for fuel when...
Well, the bottom line is fossil fuel.
Well, it's not so much the cost of the fuel, it's also the cost of efficiency. They're also running at 25-30% efficiency. If you had an old car that's leaking oil, leaking transmission fluid, smoking, chugging up the hill, you gotta step on the accelerator.
According to Hugo or Mr. Hodge, he said that they never run 100%. The power generators never run at 100% efficiency. It's always like between, I think, the best they could get running is like 50% efficiency or something like that.
And he's correct.
But you see,
but why is there a piecemeal approach? I mean, my husband does this kind of work, and he's always in an emergency over there or over here. I heard the plant over there is even worse in St. Thomas. than here in St. Croix, my understanding. But at the end of the day, why this piecemeal patching the plant? Why can't we do something more comprehensive? We have pipes that are older than us.
See, and that's the challenge. And that's why I keep advocating for change in leadership. Because it's about time that we see a strategic plan come out of WAPA. Not come out ushered in by the PSC, but the leadership in WAPA put forth a strategic plan, and the legislature put forth a strategic plan, and government house put forth a strategic, and they merge it. So we need to change leadership at that level. WAPA, legislature, and we will know where it is.
In all fairness to the administration and to Mr. Hodge, do you remember Alpine?
Yeah, I remember Alpine.
Alpine Energy.
We allowed a handful of people to say that Alpine was no good. It was not the perfect solution. It was a stopgap solution.
Right.
The PSC approved it. People who read the contract, vetted it. It would not have cost us anything. We would have been buying the electricity from Alpine, and at the same time disposing of garbage.
But did we have to subsidize them too, though?
Yeah, we had to subsidize.
Well, coming out of cost, right?
I want to use pet coke or something else.
They would have been using petroleum coke, but we had a lot of people, and there were 4 senators who, I believe, went to Florida and saw one of those plants. I think it was Senator Riley, Senator Sanas, Senator
Bassinger,
and Senator Hill, I believe. And they came back and they followed the people's will, and they said no.
Right.
So we had to start from scratch again. Until we get off of fossil fuel.
The people's will, meaning the majority, or the continued voices over here that's always vocal, that sounds like they're the majority, but not necessarily the majority.
What you just said.
No, you see, that's where I'm again confused.
No, because let's don't get confused.
No, because again,
don't get confused. There's a significant difference between the people's voice, which is the majority, and the group that is most vocal.
But again, to me, that again were politically comfortable, because when a similar vote came up with Diageo, where did Senator Hill vote? Where did those other senators vote? So what nonsense you're talking about? To me, they themselves knew they weren't going to vote for Alpine, and now they're going to blame the people to being a dissenting voice, because they knew something was flawed with Alpine. So I'm not saying, we know they have a vocal majority.
I don't know what the flaw was, because I keep hearing this thing about fly ash. You know, in this community, people hear a word and we run with it like a quarterback or
it's a
linebacker. All right. As far as I know, fly ash is used for making something called gypsum board, and gypsum board is another name for what? Sheetrock. What do we do with sheetrock? Construction. It could have been a byproduct for something in the version. So what happens is, you have voices who speak, people who listen, and people like myself who research things. They think we're idiots and they ignore us.
Let me ask a question. Again, I'm going to use another thing akin to Diageo. When they wanted Diageo to pass, the administration put everything to bear. There was a public campaign on the airwaves to make sure Diageo passed. If Alpine was to pass, where was the support from the administration and the other people who said they knew better, to advocate from Alpine to convince the people that it was the right way to go?
Obviously, it wasn't as strong as Diageo.
And why is that? So you're saying
I can't answer that.
You know the
contract. Remember, I said that the Public Service Commission voted for it.
So if you do,
it was vetted. It went.
Can you advocate though, or you can just vote and then it's done?
PSC. We're supposed to be neutral,
right?
Just like a judge. You're not gonna get any judge when another saying free.
So in other words, you just made a decision, or you put your decision out there that it's acceptable, or we should move forward
based on facts
and leave it
and figures.
But and that's where again I find it strange, because when they wanted to advance via NGN and talk about WAPA's portion, the WAPA's executive director was out there lobbying behalf of this plan.
Well, just be advised that the PSC had nothing to do with NGN or Diageo.
No, but where was WAPA's?
It's all listen, if we're going to get real, let's get real here. Because, for example, you have your former PSC chairman of the board who now works for WAPA.
Bosholti.
Who's that?
He doesn't work for WAPA. He works for WICO.
No.
Yes, he does.
Joseph Bosholti moves from, so he's no longer at WAPA.
He works at WICO.
So he's no longer at WAPA?
No.
But so he was at WAPA.
He was at WAPA.
As a matter of fact, he went to WAPA straight from the board, from the PSC board.
That's correct.
He's now at WICO, so he's moving around. But Even that, to me, gives an appearance of impropriety and conflict of interest when the people are concerned, because you just said it, they're supposed to be neutral.
Okay, well, let me just clarify that. Okay, and again, Joe can speak for himself. Mr. I'm speaking for myself and not the other commissioners. When Mr. Busholti left the PSC, every month is something different. So there is no way that he could have taken any information that we had to share with WAPA.
Well, why are you going there?
Because when people talk about the appearance of being inappropriate, I just want to let people know that it may appear that way.
But not necessarily the case.
But not necessarily the case.
If you look like a duck and walk like a duck,
you know,
it must be a duck.
You got to look at the message you're sending to the people.
Hey, I know a swan and a duck. They're going to be different. But Mr. Jackson, I'm going to say this. I'm glad you afforded us this opportunity, because I was glad that you sat in this chair and it did not hem and haw about your position or the PSC's position. You gave us a direct answer each time, and I appreciate that. But I think the people of the Virgin Islands want more from the PSC. The people of the Virgin Islands deserves more from WAPA, and they're not getting it. And I'm in the opinion that
give me an example of what you think the public wants from the PSC. Maybe I can try to answer you.
We need better wage from WAPA. We need to compel WAPA that WAPA becomes more efficient. All of those things.
Well, we cannot do that.
No, you cannot do that.
Would it help then if you get legislation passed? You have a lot of aspiring senators and those who want to get back in that need to work on some legislation. Are you of the opinion, or do you believe that if we get some legislation that would give PSC some more teeth, where it concerns, you mentioned earlier about being able to regulate WAPA and have it treated the same or similarly as the other agencies, do you think that it would help in the long run to accomplish the goal that we the people want, which is to have do you know that we pay the highest electricity bills
Quite aware of that.
across the nation and even worldwide? And do you realize that?
Yes, I do.
But
I mean, there's something wrong with this picture.
No, but it's another thing. You pay too.
But answer the question of, do you think legislation would help all these aspirants of committee? They had great ideas. They had creative ways to change, the way that things are now as it relates to our WAPA bills and fossil fuel. And we heard it. I don't think there's any idea we haven't heard. But from you, coming from the PSCs.
This is what I think will help. An infusion of money into WAPA to try to make bring the plant from running at 30% up to at least 60% will cost the consumer less in the long run.
What an estimate of this infusion of money? Are we talking?
That you'll have to get from you.
Has there been any research done by WAPA that they've shared with the PSC board saying, well,
I just told you that they don't.
X amount.
They don't share anything.
You see what I'm saying? But there has to be a communication going here, don't you think?
But
communication is we want.
You understand?
And you need to approve or disapprove.
But let me say this. In Virgin Islands, we keep saying public, and there's two organizations that I think the aspiring senators and those who get in need to change. Public Service Commission, because it seems that the public interest is not being served there. And then there's PERB, which is the Public Employee Relations Board. Again, where's the advocacy on behalf of the people?
Mr. Ferris,
and I think that we need to get that in there.
The name needs to be changed. It should be Public Utilities Commission, like it was in the past. Because what we do is regulate utilities. And if we were supposed to be advocating for the public, as you just said, what would happen is then we would actually be biased. Then if we were advocating for the utility, we would also be biased. Again, like I said in the beginning, our role is to strike a medium between the utility so that they can sustain themselves, just like we didn't talk about a ferry company or any other company or Innovative, any of them. If Innovative gets to a point where they are bleeding out and they need a rate increase and they come to us for it, we have to treat it the same way as WAPA. The only difference is we can set benchmarks that if they don't follow, there can be punitive measures taken.
But when the ratepayers come to you and say, we cannot handle another increase, aren't you supposed to listen to them and find a good medium to really handle both the ratepayers and WAPA?
Yes,
But-
and we do listen
They
to them.
but we're bleeding.
But Clint, they do public hearings.
They do,
right?
we do,
They
yes.
do
Public hearings.
But I don't know how far it goes in terms of taking into consideration what's said. And then again, it's always a key group of people. It's not necessarily.
But
the-
it's-
I have a
George.
question.
masses.
Sure.
Sir Jackson.
It's not wrong.
Who's responsible for energy ultimately? Isn't it the governor? Isn't it
Governor's
the executive?
office.
The executive branch,
Executive
right?
office,
Correct.
yes, sir.
So it's up to the executive branch and the commissioner to sit down and come up with something to do something about WAPA.
Comprehensive energy plan, yes.
So that people or the public should be advocating for the public
Correct. Yeah.
and putting pressure on the executive branch.
Correct.
That
We should.
be the case.
I think we be putting pressure on all the entities. I think Mr. Jackson, ever so often, he says that he would like to see some change in WAPA's, in the PSC's policies and the teeth that are given to them.
Comes from the
Okay, well then
legislature.
it's the legislature.
But,
then.
but then he's also saying that that he must advocate. At times, I'm thinking that they're advocating on behalf of WAPA, and I think that's where I
But-
see.
I know
But
that's
it
kind
appears that
of.
way.
Yeah,
It
appears
appears that way.
You know,
because-
like I said earlier, before this 25% increase that will take full effect at the end of December, the rate was actually going down because the cost of fuel was going down.
Right.
And I don't know if you understand that they do something called hedging.
Yeah.
Right.
All right.
Yeah.
So if you predict or try to believe that a barrel of oil is going to cost $100, $100, you will say, okay, the highest we'll pay is $100. The lowest we'll pay is $50. Now, if it drops below $50, you will not pay any less than $50. If it goes over the $100,
you don't pay anything less than
you don't pay any more. WAPA under recovered because of the big spike in the Middle East where the cost of
So
Well,
why couldn't there, since we have events in our backyard, be some sort of a agreement or negotiation where WAPA could have locked in a rate from Hovensa over a long-term period? Same way how Hovensa locked in long-term agreements from the people of the Virgin Islands.
that's negotiation between
That's a negotiation that could have taken place. I've seen other plants have
It's-
done that,
it's
and you
possible.
lock in your rate. So
I
now
agree.
we wouldn't be in this predicament, regardless of where in the world Hovensa is.
It's possible, or we could go
Right?
from month to month, and every month we'll have a
Yeah,
vacillation
this
of
month
the
to month thing is just
going
not,
up or coming
yeah,
down.
because I'm looking at your report and that's what it's saying. It's going up again. The price projected in August was at $101.85 per barrel versus our actual current cost from Hovensa, which is $121.18 per barrel. Another factor affecting the increase in the quality of the fuel being used here in the Virgin Islands. So we're like held hostage here. And I just don't think that if we had a meeting of the minds and our leaders taking the action that they needed to do, could have negotiated something that would have locked in a rate for us and not allow us to be in this quandary that we have here that continually affects us. I mean, I don't know when it's going to stop, but I
Until we
understand.
divorce
That's what we
ourselves from
wanted to
fossil
stop.
fuel, it's not going to stop.
And then what about the comprehensive energy plan? Is that in the works? Is there a draft? Is it in effect? I mean, when are we going to move away from the piecemeal and have this comprehensive energy plan on the table?
When the energy office sees fit to do so.
So again, so what Mr. Jackson is saying, that plot is not the PSC. That's the governor's office. Mr. Carl Knight from the VA
Yeah.
Energy office.
Yeah.
Mr. Hugo Hart from WAPA. And the legislature sit together to do that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jackson.
We
It's
appreciate it
my
very
pleasure.
much. We know we
I
just
hope
about
that
out
I
of
was
time
able to
again.
answer some of your questions and
But we thank you for your candid
not
answers.
raise your frustrations any higher than they are.
I tell ya.
Boy, I'm one
I hope to the viewing audience we didn't come across as frustrated as we felt, but Mr. Jackson actually did a Herculean job in really trying to answer the questions that we had. We're out of time again, but nonetheless, we really thank you and appreciate, and hopefully you'll come and join us again in the future.
Well, if you invite me, I have no problem coming
Sure
back.
will.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. All right.
All right, sir.
Which my problem?
Hi, and we're back on with VI Voices, and we want to thank so much Mr. Marion Thomas Jackson, the acting chair of the PSC board, for joining us and giving us some candid answers, although we ran out of questions. And I know we came across a little frustrated, but guys, what do you think?
I, for one thing, that he was very informative. But a matter of fact, up until tonight, I used to think the PSC will work on behalf at the public. I didn't realize that it was a neutral entity and they were biased. I mean, not biased, but they were neutral.
Neutral.
Right.
But you see, and that's my concern here.
And it appears as though they work with WAPA actually.
Because they're supposed to, they may be neutral when it comes to WAPA and the ratepayers. But what about they being biased on behalf of the environment, being on behalf and making sure businesses can flourish? And I think those are the things that we're going to have to make sure we strengthen our laws and get better laws to put teeth in the PSC.
And that's the problem. I agree totally.
Right now, so we need to lobby our senators then as far as passing bills and passing legislation that will be beneficial to the people of the budget. Now, once again, it's up to the leaders and looking out for the people.
Gentlemen, we have quite a number of laws in the book, and these administrative agencies lack teeth where it comes to enforcement and where it comes to getting the respect that they need to get their duties done. They lack it, and it's a lack again of foresight when it comes to legislation, whether they need to just revise and update the existing laws. They don't even have to start from scratch because some of the laws already exist in the book. They just need to be creative, update it, make the revisions, and be good to go. Now, part of the problem that I heard Mr. Jackson said is that some of the recommendations they have made have fallen on deaf ears, you know? So they've made these recommendations to have things put in place legislation-wise that will help them to become more effective, assist them to do their jobs, and they're a volunteer board. I believe boards on the mainland, some of the commissioners are paid here. It's a completely volunteer board. But nonetheless, they lack that team.
One of them things with the consultants you were talking on me, that struck me kind of at the $1 million consultants that got Guam up to speed or got them up to efficiency, and they offered to have them come down too.
And he said there's an ego problem there. I mean, I don't understand if we're failing, our plant is failing, and you have persons who, and Mr. Hugo Hodge would probably speak to this, we probably should have him on at some point. But if you have a plant that's failing, a plant that is deteriorating, it's dilapidated, it's old, it's you call it whatever you want. And here it is that you have a proposal on the table. You got an allotment of $1.5 million to have experts come in, a team of experts, and they would monitor the plant and at least bring it up to speed from the 30% capacity that it's running on to at least 60% capacity, which would probably help, I would think.
Save some money.
Save some money and maybe help us in the long run, right? But instead, there's a refusal. I heard a comment made about ego where WAPA is concerned, but I don't understand if it would in fact benefit us, and if in fact it benefited Guam, what is so wrong with giving it a chance if it would help us?
And you see, that's where I think we just in one big sandbox or one big pit of quicksand.
But this is not a game.
But you see, they're playing game with the people, and I think.
They're playing game because they're feeling it. Like you said, who feels the news?
And
they're making, how much they making?
300,000 plus.
And
you see, and that's why I keep saying, I'm not advocating that we need to get rid of local Virgin Islanders that are performing. I am saying, when people are not performing up to standard, if you're going, marginal cannot cut it anymore in the Virgin Islands. And we need to start to look at our leadership at all levels. And I think we need to take a very good look at WAPA and say, yes, you are one of our homeboys, but you're just straddling the fence, or you're just treading water. We need to be more than treading water. We need to start to swim. And I think that's a challenge we have with leadership.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that. I also, have a problem with the fact that there's a lack of communication among these different agencies, the PSC, WAPA, the legislature, government house. Everybody's doing their own thing, and according to what I heard him say, there's a lack of meeting of the minds. And that lack is crucial, the meeting of the minds. Even this comprehensive, comprehensive energy plan.
And that's it.
Okay, it comes from government house, okay, under what? Office of the Energy, right? But where is it? Why isn't everybody getting a chance to see a draft and put input? And I mean, where are we? Where are our priorities?
Everybody has big salaries, and they can sustain these high energy costs and high food costs and all that stuff.
Yeah, but what about a little man?
Correct.
I mean, there are people living in the Virgin Islands, people who are living without power because they can't afford to pay the water bill.
When violence started to increase in the community, the first thing they said there was gang violence. They rushed, they convened a conference, they did this, they did that, Stop the Bleeding came about. Why aren't we seeing the same level of urgency and organization taking place? Now, when we know it's a real issue, not a manufactured issue, they're not stepping up to the plate. And I see the need for our leaders to start to lead and stop misleading the folk.
And he indicated he didn't want to call any names, and we didn't really want to put him on the spot or, make him uncomfortable. But he spoke about senators who have certain pieces of legislation on their desk and blocking it for one reason or another. And if it's legislation, again, to benefit the people of the Virgin Islands, that's a travesty. And we can't have that. It's legislation to move us forward and move us out of the predicament that we are all in. We're all feeling this. I mean, the little man, we're all in this thing together. And if there's legislation that can help to make a difference for us and it's being blocked, we have to know who those people are. And we have to look at those people and we have to call them out on it.
But that's the preemption game that they play each and every 2-year cycle.
Fair.
But I'm saying that, and one senator sat here and said, "Oh, preemption is a standard in every legislative body." Now, I think preemption is used as a tool to stop the advancement of issues that can benefit the quality of life, improve the quality of life for the people in the Virgin Islands and benefit all Virgin Islanders. And I think that's where preemption becomes a problem. And we see time and time again when they talk about 6905, election reform, all of these bills are just languishing there in an area called preemption. That's where bills go to die and the people don't get heard.
Right. Yeah, and that's unfortunate because again, the people that are affected, at the end of the day, it's all of us, the people of the Virgin Islands.
I hate to say this, but again, my position is I do not see anything changing until we develop a legislature with some kind of structure which creates opposition. One side going against each other. This majority ignorance to me ain't getting nothing done because it's lopsided and St. Thomas gonna always got it controlled, and we need to go back to how the structure was.
But
they're gonna create party politics.
While I hear you, Floyd, we all are one. This is a Virgin Islands. It's St. Thomas, it's St. Croix, it's St. John, and it's Water Island. We all are one. So we shouldn't really be pitted one against the other. We really should be working together for a common cause.
The comment I just made was like about pitting each other against one another. That's not what I meant. I'm talking about the legislature. I'm talking about the legislature itself, changing the structure, which going to cause opposition. It's like any team. It's team.
Some level of adversary. But
right.
When we compete,
we don't have that. We just have one. We have one majority that's running well and doing whatever it is they want to do.
Let me give you an example. Senator Sanders had the peace officer bill.
Right.
His own majority didn't want to support him.
Right.
How does he get 2 people out of that are non-aligned and not part of the majority in an election year to support a bill of a majority senator who's up for re-election?
And if it's the 2 people I think you're talking about got their own supposed caucus, which is the NGL.
How do you support him?
Right.
And so it shows you that in essence, that there's no minority majority, there's no opposition.
Exactly.
Everybody is just in the back crafting deals to
listening to you guys, and I know like in the Caribbean Islands, they have the opposition party, and I know what
every place in the world. This is the only place in the world.
I'm picturing it, but I'm trying to picture it here in the Virgin Islands.
But let me give that. How do you think you go to Jamaica? No, go to Florida.
Go to Puerto Rico.
No, let's go Florida. The Republicans win the House in their Senate, and you get a Democrat to be president of your legislature? Not heard of.
I see your point.
And I'm not showing you that
only in the Virgin Islands.
And basically what they're doing that to you and I, so they can get support from you and I. But when they go in, all 15 of them feed from the same trough, and you and I at the detriment of you and I. That's my analysis.
So you know what? Let's bring on, who do y'all think might be somebody good that we could probably bring on in the future and have a little back and forth on that, because that might be.
Cecil Benjamin, put him here.
Yes.
Bring Brad Nugent, put him here. Bring George Moore, put him there. Those are the party leaders here in the Virgin Islands.
According to the papers, they got somebody from the DNC down here that supposedly training the Democrats. I read that there.
Training them
how to be more effective to do the job.
Training them to put a leash around and they can be led. That's what they're doing, man. Training them to be led.
It is a hot topic. I think it's a good topic, and people probably do want to hear more of that.
We should bring Benjamin and we name it here. Nugent is Nugent. Yeah, Brad Nugent.
Nugent.
Good idea.
Herb Shambub and George Moore. Go
Alright,
to the
guys,
party leaders.
it's a clarion call, so we're coming to get you, okay? Nikki's hearing this and taking notes, so you listen out for that phone call pretty soon, okay? But anyway, thank you all so much for joining us again on another edition of VI Voices. And don't forget to rock your vote. It's all about voting. Come November 6th, let's do it here in the Virgin Islands and across the nation as well, so that we can let your voice be heard. Thanks for joining us. Good night.
Good night.